Merry Christmas, everyone! You ready to do a painting together? Let's get started. So you're going to need your canvas, your brush, your paints, a water jar, and a napkin. Make sure you are painting someplace that you're not afraid to get dirty just in case, or have something down to protect it. I have a little palette here, but you don't need to have a palette. You can just have like a paper plate. The ones that are kind of waxy are especially good because they don't dry out the paints. We are going to start with red paint, and I wanted to have a sort of orangey color to it, so I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow here, and I'm mixing it directly on my canvas so you guys can see that. And whenever I start painting, I'm going to start using long diagonal strokes, so you can see I'm going from left to bottom right, and I'm trying to make parallel lines as I go and continue my stroke all the way across the canvas. Another thing to remember is to always paint the sides and top and bottom of any canvas you're working with. Even if you have one of the flatter ones, go ahead and paint any sides that may be showing so no white is showing anymore. Next, you can see here I've started to mix some red and black, and I'm just going to add some in some streaks. So I'm not always going fully across the canvas until I'm ready to blend it in, but this gives it just kind of a rustic look. So I'm adding in those darker streaks right now, and you can add in lighter streaks if you get too much black in there. One tip is always to use a tiny bit of black first, because a little bit of black goes a long way. I personally wanted some lighter streaks in here, so I made my orangey color and then I added a tiny bit of white to it just to make it a little bit more opaque. While we let our background dry a little bit, we're going to wash off our brush and dry it off. Let it sit on the napkin a second so that all the water drains out onto the paper and not into your paint, making it too liquidy. And then use your paper plate or your palette, and let's mix a sort of light olive green. So the green I had was a little too bluish. As you know, yellow and blue make green, so I wanted it to be more yellowy, so I added more yellow and I added a touch of white to get it lighter, and then to get that brownish tone that's mixed into an olive color, I added just a touch of red, and that's going to get us there. We're going to use that paint in the future, so just leave that spot where it is, and let's mix now a darker olive color. So again, I'm getting some green, and I am going to add just a little bit of black, but that's not going to do it. I'm still going to need probably a little bit of yellow, and then that red is really what's going to do it for us. Next, I want to make an actual brown, which is really just mixing multiple colors together. So I had that spot of red and black, and I added some green that was on my brush and a little bit of blue. I'm going to come back in and add some yellow. Orange is kind of the base of brown, so I like adding plenty of red and yellow in there, but you can mix it until you get the tone that you want or the color that you want. I'm trying to go for a dark brown for like a wood color, because that's what we're going to be painting in our nativity scene. After you get the color that you like, we are going to put the base down for our nativity. Keep in mind that because our canvas is still going to be a little bit wet, that it's not going to be quite as dark as we're hoping for our finished product, but that's okay. We're going to do a couple different layers here. So I have two vertical lines. They have, if you'll notice, about equal space to the left and right of them. So this is centered, and then it goes up to a point on the roof of the nativity. I did go ahead and mix a little bit lighter brown, trying to cover up a little bit more of that that canvas that was showing through because of the wet paint. But again, it's not really a huge deal if you don't get it completely covered right now. For this next step, I'm going to wash my brush and just leave a little bit of water on it. Not a whole lot. You don't want to drip on your background, or it's going to remove the paint and give you a major headache. But if I leave my brush a little bit damp, I can use it kind of like a sponge to scrub off some of that red paint. And I'm scrubbing it specifically in the places that I am painting the baby and the manger. So the baby is an oval for the body, a circle for the head. The manger underneath him is a rectangle, and then the two little legs are two more rectangles. And then I just did go ahead and sketch in where the hay would be showing. This process is actually called creating an underpainting, so it helps you almost have like a sketch of where to fill in the colors later. And it also helps us to not have to cover such a dark color whenever we go over it with the colors that we are going to paint this. For that same reason, I'm going to recommend that you add just pure white on top of where you did your underpainting. That way our colors have an easier time covering up those sections. I did add a little halo, which is just a line over baby Jesus's head, and then some Christmas trees, really small Christmas trees. They're no taller than baby Jesus, to the left and right of the Nativity. A Christmas tree is basically a collection of triangles, so you have a small triangle at the top and then it gets wider and wider towards the bottom. At the top of the Nativity, we're going to have some garland or some ivy, some sort of greenery. And so that's why I'm adding that white on top there. So just think about how your plants might lay on top of there. I also, you can see me here adding some brown again to those left and right walls just to try to touch them up because my red was showing through. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that brown to the manger since it is made of wood as well. I wanted this to be a little bit darker and I needed to mix some more. So again, I had my red, yellow, little blue, little black, basically getting that first coat of paint on there. After that's done, you can wash your brush off, dry it off, and we're going to start adding our dark green. Now, if you did really thick white paint or red paint, you need to let that dry first. So make sure your canvas is completely dry or you're going to do like I did and get a sort of lighter green here that you were not wanting. Because I know I can always go back and fix it later, I went ahead and proceeded forward with my two different types of green on top of the Nativity, and then I started laying the foundations of green for the grass and for the Christmas tree to the left and right of the manger. Now for the direction of the garland on top of the manger, make sure they are kind of sloping down as if it were rain dripping off the sides of the roof. That's the direction you want to go. And then I did make my Christmas trees a dark base with some of the olive toned color over top of it, just like I did on the top of the Nativity. If you have, like on my canvas, the top, bottom, and left and right sides, you do want to go ahead and extend your painting down the side. So I did add green to the bottom of my painting and just a little bit to the left and right side where the Christmas trees hang over the edge. Wash your brush really good, and then we're going to come and add a little bit of that underpainting again for the star. So I just basically erased out where I had the green coming down in the center of the Nativity. And then I started wanting to make a bit of a gold color. So my yellow was too bright. I added a little bit of red to give it a sort of orangey tone, and then I added white to make it more opaque. And instead of going straight into the star, I tried to be a little bit smarter and not mix in my green and just lay a base for the straw underneath baby Jesus. I also added in a little bit more white on this one to create some streaks to define some of the pieces of straw. Next, I added a line over top of baby Jesus's head for the halo that's going to be above his head. And I messed up a little bit, made it too big, so I'll come out and erase that out later by adding more red in between the head and the halo. But for now, that was what I did just before adding in the star. So we want to do this, the star, using the thin edge. I put it on the brush on its side so that you're getting the thinnest possible, the straightest possible edge of the brush so that we get nice thin lines. So you do a cross or like a plus sign, and then two diagonals from the top left to bottom right and top right to bottom left, and just kind of work with your shape on that. Once you're happy with how that's looking, go ahead and wash your brush. We're going to use a little bit of white to mix into a brown that we made earlier to create a light brown for Jesus's head. And then we'll use pure white for Jesus's body. I had some paint coming through, or some red paint, so it made it a little bit pink. I had to do multiple coats. So if you have that same problem, do not fret. You can always do another coat of paint. Speaking of doing extra layers of paint, I wanted to mix another darker brown so that I could add a little more variation and another coat onto the left and right side of the nativity that's showing the wood, as well as the manger. Next, I'm going to use that super dark brown, almost black, to outline the head a little bit and add some dark variations to the hay underneath baby Jesus. Don't worry, this is not the final product. I'm going to come back out and thin out the line around his head and add more golden straw. But this is going to help define some of those shapes. Did you notice how the red from the background got onto my baby Jesus? That just goes to show mistakes happen and it's okay. They can be fixed. So if you're running into mistakes, don't stress about it. Go ahead and let that dry if the paint is too wet and it's messing up. And what I had to do was wash my brush, get some pure white, and move on to the snow on other parts of my canvas. So I added some strokes following the direction that the branches would go on the Christmas trees, to the left and right. I also wanted a little bit of a glare on the star above the nativity, so I added that very thinly, again turning my brush on its side. And by the time that was done, I was able to come back over with some white on baby Jesus's body and redo some of the straw underneath, or hay. I did go ahead and make some touch-ups now, including mixing a new light brown for baby Jesus's head and fixing up his halo, since I had messed that up before. And I used that same yellow to touch up my star. And now it's time to go in with white, assuming all the rest of your paint is dry. Add the snow to the top of the manger, brighten any whites you already have. I added a little glare on his halo and the left and right supporting beams for the nativity and highlights for the hay. I added a little bit of highlight onto the manger itself, just assuming snow was kind of getting on everything. I made sure I had nice bright white snow on the bottom and on the trees to the left and right, and generally touched up everything that I wanted to, because this next step that we're going to do is the last step. So make sure you're happy with everything before you do this next thing, which is to flick snow onto the canvas. So if you don't know how to do this, you are going to be adding some water to white paint until it's about the consistency of gravy, or maybe a little bit thinner. Then you load up your brush. You don't want it dripping, because you want to be able to control where the drops are going for the most part. But you do want enough on there so that you can take your finger and just pull back the bristles and flick the white paint where you want it. I definitely recommend having something underneath your painting for this, and be aware of your surroundings. This can get a little bit out of control, so you don't want to do this in a place where you cannot get paint on anything. If you can go outside, that's even better. Once you're done with your painting, feel free to sign it. You can use it as a gift or display it in your home. You can hang it on the wall. I thought it might be cute to put a string and hang it on a tree or as decoration somewhere, so I did provide some twine with your baggies. You can use either an industrial glue like I am using, or a hot glue gun if you have it at home, and adjust the string to the length that you want it and glue it to the back. And once it's dry, you've got your finished product. I hope you guys enjoyed painting with me today, and I wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas.